Ready, set, sketch. I'll be making a card today from that sketch. I'm using Dream Street Papers pattern paper. It's called Art Nouveau Aesthetic. I loved it because of the browns, the taupes, and that little hint of blue. I was planning on turning this card into a monochromatic card using browns, but this little hint of blue didn't quite work. So I'm using Studio G Series 32 stamps. I'm going to be using the footprints, the little footprint tag, as well as the I Love Dogs symbol. I'm also using Great Impressions stamp. It's got 2 little puppy dogs and a little cat. The first thing I did was I used my dry color box fluid chalk in Chestnut Roan. It was a dry pad, and I used that to distress all of the edges of my paper. It's my favorite distressing tool. After I distressed everything, then I started off with this piece of paper. This is walnut basil paper, and it measures 5 1/4 by 3 1/4. I'm going to stamp using a wet Chestnut Roan ink pad and just stamp those footprints all across the top. It may look like I'm pressing hard, but actually I'm not. And look at my finger, I always curl my pinky. After I finished that whole side, I turned it over and I started stamping that edge. I didn't worry about inking up my workspace. I'll clean that up out when I'm finished. Alright, so now I'm going to spritz my board. I'm using Simple Green Cleaner, and I use that to clean my workspace as well as clean my stamps. Just squirt it on and rub it off. Simple as that. I use it in a Herbal Essence conditioner bottle just because it makes a fine mist. That strip of paper, the pattern paper, measures 5 1/4 by 1 1/2, and I'm just gluing it down. It probably doesn't have to be 1 1/2 inches wide, but I just use that measurement just to make sure that I give myself some leeway. After it's pressed down, I'm going to attach a strip of cream colored cardstock. That's that same cardstock that's on my card base right there. And I just added some stitching along the edge, the top edge, as well as on that little tab there. I punched out from my quick cuts of that little tab right there. I'm not going to use the paper button, but I will be using a real button. So I'm just lining it up. And I'm gluing that strip of paper out of sight. And I'll just line it up, making sure that that point touches the bottom of my cardstock. Just making sure it's all nice and straight. Pressing it down. And the next step was to decide on what kind of ribbon I was going to use. It was a toss-up between the thin grosgrain ribbon or the thicker grosgrain ribbon. Which one do you like? Thick, thin? thick. I like the thick ribbon, so I taped it there. I'm using my Scotch double stick tape. It's my favorite. Works really good. And I'll just stick it to the back. As you can see, I only use one strip of ribbon. I don't wrap my ribbon around the back. I think it wastes a lot of ribbon and it makes it a little too bulky. Nobody sees the back anyway, right? All right, and then I use some twine or hemp or whatever you want to call it. I already tied the ribbon on, and I used some crystal effects on the footprint to make it a little shiny. I'm just going to adhere that to the back as well, using a few more pieces of double stick tape. Snip the edges off. Turn it over. And now I'm going to attach, oh, right there, I just made sure when I attached that tag that it was stuck on and the fibers were spread out. This gives it a little texture. I'm gluing the image on. I already pop dotted it and colored it in. Now I'm just lining up the image, the card front on the card base, and I'm inking it up, or excuse me, I'm gluing it using my Aleene's Tacky Glue. I'm just drawing on the ink or the glue. I don't use very much, but I find that Aleene's Tacky Glue works really, really well at making sure that that card front does not leave that base. So it's very important, don't make a mistake once you use that glue. All right, now I wasn't quite finished because the last step was to put that button on, and then I decided after I finished videotaping that I wanted to include another stamp, the I Love Dogs, along that border from the cardstock to the pattern paper. So you don't see it here, but you'll see the finished product on my blog. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.